Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us to today's webinar brought to you by our friends at Team Hired and myself and Craig at CWC, along with our very, very special guests, Justin Strong and Lisa Faina, all about recruiting and building your team even now during these very interesting times that we find ourselves in. I'm here just to help moderate Q&A and chat and stuff, and also to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Just some housekeeping tips. We are recording this call for CWC members. I'll have it on the recorded webinars for owners course within about an hour after we wrap. So if you need to jump off or something, you can dive back in, or if you want to have your manager watch the recording or something, you certainly can on the CWC platform. All lines are muted to eliminate distractions, and we cannot see you. We can't. So just go on with yourself and be comfy if you want, whether you're at home like Dave in his quarantine hat because he's afraid to show his hair, or you're at the office like Lisa. We cannot see you or hear you. To communicate with us, please don't chat. Please use the Q&A. So down at the bottom, there's a Q&A button. If you click that, it's easier to ask questions that way for me to moderate or for Craig to moderate as he's going through stuff. With that said, welcome to the call. I'm going to pass it to Craig Wiggins and David Williams, our hosts.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys being on the call today. I think, with everything going on, we're in a very unique position where we're able to continue to do business. And frankly, I think right now, hiring and recruiting should be like at the top of the list. It's for years, it's the last several years, it's been one of the toughest things in our business. And I think that right now things are going to kind of, loosen up a little bit because you've got so many people looking for work. So we wanted to have Dave and Justin and Lisa on the call today to talk about some things that they're doing, things that Dave and Team Hired are doing, and also that Justin and Lisa are taking advantage of to help those of you that are still trying to recruit and really try to face the challenges that we have today where everything is so virtual, in terms of, not having people coming in face to face, or maybe they're, a little afraid or not so eager to come in face to face. So I know Dave's got some things that he's working on, and I know Justin and Lisa are actually implementing some of these things. So we thought it'd be great to have a conversation with these guys today and talk a little bit about this. So Dave, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do, and how you are working with your clients at Team Hired to face these challenges and the way we're recruiting and hiring today versus the way we did it just a couple months ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's definitely a spot where we had to pivot very quickly because, those of you that don't know how we facilitate our services is we really dissected the hiring process and looked what got in the way fundamentally. And one of the biggest things that we found was really time. With all the different hats an agency owner has to wear, when you look at the hiring process as a whole, especially if you're hiring multiple candidates, it can get very time consuming if you're doing it the right way. Because we typically find that magic number is interviewing maybe 9 to 10 individuals and then vetting them down to get to that one right person. And then for some people, if you're not doing it all the time too, it can be uncomfortable or intimidating. But the way we normally did things is we'd essentially take most of that off your plate. We assign a dedicated recruiter. We post all the job ads. We solicit all the candidates. We do some basic vetting, and we'd host live career events in agencies to get more people in front of somebody in an hour than maybe they've seen all month or all quarter. Obviously, with everything in current state of events right now, it's kind of ruling out the fact of being able to have people with the social distancing in groups like that. So we had to pivot pretty quickly, and we took everything virtually is what we did. And believe it or not, it's actually, in a lot of circumstances, I think working out better. So we took the exact same principles, and instead of scheduling them live in the office, we're scheduling them on group Zoom calls. But the nice thing that we really like about this is that first call that we get on is we get to have our recruiter, Olivia, actually be there and walk the agency owner through the process, make sure that they're fully comfortable with it. And it's worked out really well because now you have, potentially 7, 8, 9 candidates that are all on a Zoom call with you like this that you get to vet, you get to have conversation with. You could have multiple people jump in. So we always recommend to have multiple decision makers in your organization. So if it's the agency owner and maybe a hiring manager or office manager involved in the process, this kind of brings ease of use to pull everybody in. And then even after the fact, you can you can kind of share those videos out to anybody else in your agency to see what they thought of the candidate. But it's been going really well so far.
Very good. Well, Lisa, let's start with you. I know you've been doing a really good job with this. Why don't you talk a little bit about what he just said in terms of the recruiting that you're having to do now virtually versus, even the group interviews or the face-to-face one-on-one interviews. How are you doing that? How is that going so far?
Well, when our first virtual interview, I wasn't too sure how it would go because normally we have people come in here. This is my break room, conference room. And so we're used to the face-to-face. So obviously with 10, 12 people, you're wondering, okay, how will this work virtually? And actually it's really great because it shows how tech-savvy they are because they have to get onto Zoom. And you can see everybody in one spot, and you can see their reactions when we ask the questions. And we've had people that were like yawning, during the interview, and you just really can see them better virtually as opposed to even in real life, I guess you might say, when they come into the office. So I do like this. I will most likely want to continue virtually, at least initially, because it really is a great thing. I like the virtual. That's one thing. Olivia is awesome. I mean, she's really great with helping getting everybody scheduled. When we first put the ad in about 3 weeks ago, 3.5 weeks ago, we had so many people apply. We had over 200 people apply within a week and a half. And so going through that and setting up the appointments, we had 5 events, so 5 individual virtual events. And it just, like I said, it's really great because you get to see the people's reactions, the candidates' reactions, and you learn a lot from them. So you learn a lot just watching what they say and how they're talking and everything.
Yeah, I think you're so right too. I think when you force people to do it like that, you learn a lot about their technical skills, and we're doing so much training now virtually anyways. It's a great idea. Just go ahead and get started with that and see how they respond, how they react to that. Justin, what about you, man? What kind of tips do you have for people that are trying to recruit in this virtual world and doing it this way versus face-to-face like we've done in the past?
Well, for me, especially being in a rural community, it's hard to get a lot of qualified candidates. So with the way that Team Hired does the advertising, the ads out there and everything, it's been able to put a large volume of people in front of me and be very efficient at interviewing them. So kind of like what Lisa was talking about, I've had anywhere from 2 to 15 people inside of one group interview session, and it's a really interesting way to sort through people because you get to see people's personalities, stick out to people who kind of start to try to control the conversation. So if you're looking for salespeople, it's a really unique way to start watching the kind of the cream rise to the top. So, but for me, it's really efficient, and it's this allows you to get into a situation where you can interview a lot of people at one time and grow my agency. That's a big key right now. You kind of alluded to it at the beginning that we're, the last few years, it's been kind of hard to find agents because of the job market. And now it's not. Now people are looking for jobs, and the number of qualified people that are out there looking for jobs right now is really, really high. So if you have the resources to grow right now, it's a great time to do that.
So for both of you guys, we'll just start with Justin on this one. These interviews that you're doing, first of all, first question, how long are you spending with them during the interview? And then what are some of the key questions that you're asking to get people talking?
Yeah, great question. So the great thing about working with Team Hired is that they give you scripts to use, and those scripts, I started the first couple of them not using them. I kind of tried to use my own interview process, and I realized pretty quickly that it needed to change. So the scripts that they give you to use really help find the type of person that you're looking for, and I can't speak highly enough, say enough good things about what it's been doing for me so far.
Yeah, and I can kind of piggyback on that a little bit too. Like usually we recommend asking in terms of questions is different and creative questions on the call. that work the best, because what we found over there over time is just doing interview after interview is there's a lot of professional interviewers out there, the people that have been in the job market for just extended periods of time. And they've been on so many interviews, they've almost became pros at it. And very easily somebody could come into an interview, say all the right things. They can talk the talk, but you hire them and they can't necessarily walk the walk. So what I like to do and what we like to provide is, creative and different questions that get people to think on their feet. And it's something they maybe haven't heard before. So an example of a creative question I like to ask is, if you had to compare your current or past organization to a professional sports team, what team did you play on and what role did you play on that team to help them win championships? So the right caliber person, or the closer to the right caliber person, is going to have more of a quick-witted answer to that and come up with closer along the lines of what you're looking to hear. But somebody that's maybe a professional interviewer, they're maybe going to stumble, fumble. They're going to show the fact that they lack confidence, and allows you to weed out those the wrong candidates right away.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Craig, also you asked about the time frame here.
Yeah.
My interviews first started out around 30 minutes long, and the more skilled I got at this, the more experience I had with it. Now my interviews running right an hour long each time.
Okay.
And
So Lisa, when you go through that, you've done this group interview with everybody virtually. What's the next step, or how do you whittle it down to the people that you want to pursue, and then how do you go about that? What's that look like?
So basically, my sales managers, we interview together, and we take notes, because after you do several, everybody some will stick out, but then you're like, oh wait, so what did this person? You need reminders. We take notes and we compare, and then what I do is I actually, right before the interview, I send out the ideal traits. I use ideal traits, and I also use Omnia. So I send out the ideal traits, and I don't let them know that they need to take it before the virtual interview, but a lot of people will take it. They'll be proactive and take it. So that's just one thing. And then after the interview, during the interview, I let them know you should have received an email from me about ideal traits, and it's an assessment. And I just say it doesn't disqualify you. It just shows whether you're more leaning towards sales or customer service. And please fill that out. And as soon as you fill that out, we'll contact you. And what I've been doing, because we have received so many, I like ideal traits. If they don't take a long time and they do well on the problem solving, that's something I look at. They take 4 hours on the problem on the whole assessment, then they're Googling the answers, which they can do. But that always helps with maybe how quickly they'll catch on to the job. And then I let them know that I'll call them back, that we have a lot of applicants, and if they get called back, there's one other assessment, which would be the Omnia, that I'll have them take. But what I've been doing is I've sent the Omnia right after those that I like with ideal traits, and they've been filling it out. And then from there, I call them back to schedule a one-on-one Zoom interview. And I'm in the final stages right now. I have about 7 candidates. We just finished our virtual last week, our interviews last week, and so I'm working through talking to everybody individually one-on-one, and that's pretty much where we are. But I really like this. I haven't liked interviewing and hiring before, but this is fun. It's fun because there are a lot of good candidates out there, and they realize how important it is to get with a stable industry such as ours, and they're hungry. So it's a good thing.
Well, you mentioned the timing. I think I always look for the good in everything anyways, right? I think, the good, and there's a lot of good that can come from this whole situation. A lot of it could be just personally, where you spend more time with people and you appreciate more things and all that. But I think there's a lot of candidates out there that maybe they haven't even lost their job, but maybe they're thinking about maybe doing something different that has a lot more stability and is maybe more recession proof, versus being in an industry where maybe they're still employed, but right now, I don't know if there's a better place to be than what we do, besides maybe working for the media. We're in a pretty good spot. We're not really that much at risk in terms of our livelihood. As long as everybody can get through this, we'll be okay. So Justin, are you doing anything in that regard? Are you like trying to target people? And if so, any particular industry, where maybe they're not unemployed, but they might be a much better fit here versus what they're doing right now because of the stability?
So honestly, the majority of the people that I've interviewed so far have lost their job. And a good portion of them have been with agencies that have lost their job because they closed down. So, as far as targeting specific, people leaving specific industries, no, because we've been looking strictly for salespeople. So people with experience and who are licensed currently. So, but that's what I've seen the most, is that people have actually lost their jobs. And
really, that's interesting. So what carriers, because I think a lot of people on the call may find that a little bit surprising, because we've been able to just, go remote, keep working. I don't really know. We have a few members that maybe have laid some people off, but the vast majority have just kept right on trucking. So are there any carriers that people could be looking for or targeting that maybe would be interested?
So, yeah, so actually one of the carriers I've seen this the most with has been State Farm so far. I've had a good number of candidates come from the State Farm world, and they couldn't maintain their current role with the employer, so the employer let them go. So, but that's been the one I've seen the most of. There has been a few independents I've seen, but it's been mainly on the captive side so far.
Okay. How about you, Lisa?
It's a variety, and as you're talking about people, and not just people who've lost their jobs, like in the service industry, like restaurants, people that are looking, you're right, it has encouraged people. You do find people who are still employed that are looking. And one thing I forgot to mention is before before we start the interview, we have a PowerPoint presentation of our agency. And Dave has he obviously gave us that idea, and we take some things that are on our website. We talk about our culture. We always talk about our culture, and how we're a team. And we start that before we ask the questions, and that actually has attracted a lot of, once we get into the virtual interviews, that's attracted a lot of people. And when we do the one-on-one interviews, we find that they're very interested in that. So it's a variety. I don't really see anyone coming from one specific industry. We don't see that with State Farm. That's interesting though. We see a lot of like Comcast or a lot of different industries, but it's been pretty stable across the board with that.
It's a really good point you bring up regarding talking about your culture. We spend a lot of time making sure people understand the expectations before we ever even get to the point of making an offer or anything like that. And a couple of things that we talk about, not just our culture internally, but going over our non-negotiables. A lot of times when you go over your non-negotiables and you talk about the things that you just will not tolerate, people find that attractive a lot of times, because they might be in an environment now that's very toxic where, gossip is allowed, and they do play favorites, and they do, have things that are somewhat, negotiable, and it shouldn't be. And they don't like that, and when we talk about that a lot, we've actually been able to get some candidates' attention with that. So, as you're going through those questions and you're interviewing people, a lot of times people get so excited about a candidate and they kind of rush to the offer too quickly. And I think you need to definitely make sure that they sell themselves on you first. And then once you're sold on them, that's when you got to talk about all those things that they're going to find appealing, or hopefully find appealing, especially as you get towards the comp. Because, we listen to a lot of interviews, because sometimes our members will record the interviews and send them to us. And when they get to the comp, first of all, they got there too fast. They didn't really get, through the non-negotiables and the culture and all the things, expectations of activity, all those types of things. And then when they get to the comp, it's just, salary plus commission. And they really haven't built anything up around that. And I think you really need to do that well. You need to sell that part of the deal. Once they've sold themselves on you, you've got to really sell them, because, they're, even with everything that's going on, there's still probably other things that they're looking at. And you want to be the most appealing opportunity. So your comp just can't be salary plus commission. You've got to go in a lot deeper than that and really explain and do a good job with that so they get excited about it and feel like this is going to be a great opportunity. Otherwise, you run the risk of losing them to somebody else, even though your opportunity might be better than the person they went to, because they may have more salary over there or whatever it may be. So it's good that you bring that up, because I think a lot of times people miss that part. They get so excited about somebody who just sounds good or is a professional interviewer, and they miss some of those key things, like expectations. You've got to talk about your expectations, not just of production, but of activity. And you really got to set that stage in the very beginning. Otherwise, you're going to get people that come on and they're not going to know what you expect specifically. And they're just going to come in and do whatever they're going to do. And if there's no consequences, they're just going to keep doing that. And then 6 months later, you got a problem, or if that long. So communicating all those things during that interview, I think, is really critical. Wouldn't you say, Dave, that you need to talk about what's expected?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. And, when we're looking for candidates too, the biggest thing that I'm looking for out of anybody is character. So at the end of the day, a lot of things can be trained and coached, but character is one of those things. And to your point with the non-negotiables, I look at it and say, okay, this is our culture. This is our non-negotiables that we have. Can this person live up to this in every single aspect of it? And that's really the main thing that we're looking for. And I think there are some other great points you made there too during the hiring process. This is a two-way street. Not only do we want the candidates to, really sell themselves to us and prove that they're going to be a viable candidate for the position, but when you find that right candidate, especially somebody that's really high caliber, you got to have something to bring to the table just as much too, so you get that yes for them. Because otherwise, there's too many people that I've came across. They'd finally find that right person. They would make the offer, and then they would maybe ghost them, or they didn't accept the position. And I've always found it came down to that, first and foremost, the career opportunity itself. Is there a career path for that individual that when they come in, they can see that the sky's the limit and there's always that next step? Is the compensation program, is it competitive? And is it very simple to understand? I've looked at compensation plans before that were 4 pages long, and you almost needed a decoder ring to try to figure out how you get paid. And what I recommend to everybody is really look at everything through the lens of the candidate. Even when you have maybe candidates coming in your office to interview, walk in your office and act as if you were the candidate, looking through their eyes. And what do you see in your culture? What do you see in your office? How do you see your team interacting? And if you were a candidate coming in, would that be a place you wanted to work? So, it comes down to having the right culture, having the right compensation plan, and then having that long-term career path for that individual where they can see they're saying yes to something long-term that they can really grow in. And I think, now's a better time than ever. I've always found great opportunity during times of adversity. And now there's more candidates in the marketplace than ever, and there's more quality candidates. So if you come out there now, you could, if you embrace these times, you could really go out there and be a hero to somebody. Because somebody just lost their job. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of uncertainty. You introduce them to the insurance industry. Not only do you have a great candidate, but I can guarantee you when they look 90 days out, they're going to think twice before ever leaving your agency, because you were the one to be there during times of uncertainty, maybe when their other job that they've been at for 5 years wasn't. And they're finding now stability in the insurance industry and your agency specifically.
Definitely. I can remember back in 2008, man, the market was just flooded with really good candidates, people that were outstanding, but you had to appeal to them. I mean, you still had to have that, that offering. One thing I would recommend to you guys, especially now if you're going to do these on Zoom and virtually, record them and then go back when it's over and watch yourself and pay attention to what you did or didn't do or how you sounded, or maybe even let somebody else take a look at that, your significant other, maybe somebody else in the office, and see if there's something you could do a little bit better. We've been doing that for years with just live face-to-face interviews where we record that and listen back and think, man, we could have done that differently and improved for the next time. So there's a lot of ways to get better at this. I think if you'll set the expectations, if you'll really do a good job with that and go over not just what's required from them production related, but activity, like specifically, how many calls, how many quotes, all the things that you're looking for, really do a good job of talking about it. And don't just blow through it to hope they don't really understand it and say no, but they really grasp it. and they understand it. And you can ask, how does it make you feel? How do you feel having to make 100 phone calls a day? And if you get any red flags on that, then that's probably not going to be a good fit. And you just need to move on. So you need to go through that. Let's take some questions. We got a couple questions here. We got one from Bill. Says interviewing virtually is an easy concept, but with Allstate's requirement of using an Allstate compatible computer, how do you get a new hire the physical equipment to do their job, especially if they're working from home? Anybody?
Sorry about my light.
What's that?
I have the lights that go off and on.
That's okay. You're green. So how do you guys do that? How do you handle that? How do you handle the equipment?
Yes, I can speak.
Go ahead.
Okay, I can speak to that a little bit. So, in terms of, a lot of people wondering, like, okay, you start somebody up in this kind of environment, how do you get them trained? How do you get them the right resources? Well, I found it's actually the time to maybe slow down the training process because, more times than not, what I've seen in the past is somebody just gets thrown into it. And this is a great opportunity to really take time to slow it down, coach them, get them all the training they need. So if it's somebody coming in for, maybe just to get their license, taking that time to get them the tools and resources to get up in license. Once they're up in license, pairing them up with a top person in the organization first and foremost. Because I've always found that, new people coming in, they learn the best from the best. And we'll always work off of a buddy system and pair them up with, with that buddy and set some expectations and maybe some incentives in place for that, top producer in the agency to mentor that individual that they can really learn from. So as they're starting out, a lot of it in the beginning, is shadowing and learning from that person. We have them on CWC to make sure that they have a path to follow in that first 30, 60 days. And, as for the equipment piece of it, that's real easy. We get that, ship that out to them, have them sign off on a doc that they're, responsible for the equipment. But we basically have a one-pager that we created from a technology standpoint that is easy step-by-step process that they could follow to get set up, all the requirements and specs that they need to be off to the races.
So Lisa, I'll ask you this, because I think a lot of people they're struggling with this now. Even some people that had some maybe initial success when they went remote. What are you doing now to hold your people accountable as they're working in that remote setting, whether it's a brand new hire, maybe somebody that you've had for a while, and they are working from home and they're very autonomous. How do you handle that?
I had 3.5. I've had 4 people working remote before all this happened. So we're pretty used to monitoring. I mean, we monitor talk time. Now what I do is I have my assistant put out talk time for everybody, 2 times throughout the day. And then the whole team gets to see how much, because talk time, I always say, if you're not talking, you're not selling, you really can't do much of anything. Emailing isn't going to do it, texting. So I monitor basically on the talk time. We look at the amount of quotes. You can look at EH, and I don't actually micromanage that as much, because the bottom line is, what are they producing and how many people are they getting in touch with? So back to the talk time, it can't be one person for 3 hours or 4 hours. They have to have several people that they're talking to. With the new people, it's you really do, just like Dave said, you really have to have someone with them pretty much. They have to be attached at the hip. So for sales, like my sales manager, we will be with them. Of course, they have to go through university. Florida is a little bit different, where you can take a 4-day class online, and the 4th day, there isn't an exam. There's an exam, but they pretty much tell you all the answers. So it's just not like a really tough exam. So after that, they're licensed. So they just have to go get their fingerprints, and then, which there are places open, and they can do that, and then they can, they're ready to go. They just have to go through university. And I've hired 1 person so far. I've got a couple more that Joseph spoke to that he likes. So thank you, Joseph. And he's great with interviewing. Also, he gives us that extra stamp of approval. And I'm going to have him come into my office to pick up the equipment, because I just think it's important to see them. And same thing as what Dave said, I have my sales manager that will, because we're mainly looking for sales, but I'm also looking for customer service. So it's something that we have a training package that we have put together that we give to them, just different things to monitor. But it is, you really have to have one person that's attached at the hip with them to help them and make sure that they're not falling asleep during the day, or they're just, they're really ready to go and they get the proper attention, because getting them started out correctly is a key. You got to get them going right away, or else then they get into a different mode that you don't want. So.
Totally agree with that. And what she's referring to when she's talking about Joseph, if you're on our coaching level or higher programs, we pre-screen applicants. So if you got somebody that you've gone through this process with and you're ready to put them on, you can actually schedule a call with me or Joseph, and we'll have a conversation with them and just kind of give you our input on them. So that's what she's talking about there. What about you, Justin? What about, someone that comes on, they're brand new, and you got to get them trained up. And obviously some of these people, they're, a lot of them are working remotely. How do you handle that? What's that process look like to get somebody trained where you're not physically able to be side by side with them?
So we of course take advantage of Zoom meetings, so we're doing a lot of Zoom meetings throughout the day, but it goes back to somebody new. We are very clear in the expectations. We want to define the expectations that we have for them, also the expectations that they have when they come on for us, so we can all work towards the same common goal. So defining those expectations is very important. And then we're going to bring them into the live training environments, into those morning meetings where we're in here reporting our activities from the previous day. We're looking at calls, we're looking at quotes, number of households that you're quoting, and also the amount of time you're spending on the phone. We feel like right now people aren't walking in the office, and they aren't coming into the offices and taking up that time. So, your talk time should be increasing right now. You should be more active. You have to be right now because things are harder. So we're definitely looking at their activity, and we're touching base with them, 2 to 3 times a day to see what they're doing, trying to monitor their progress and get them to that point where they are on the phones and starting to sell.
If I could just jump in real quick. I'm
sorry.
Go
ahead, Joseph. Go ahead.
So there's lots of questions on like training virtually. And what I love about this, whether it's Zoom or Skype or whatever, and I'm not going to do it right now, but I could easily share my screen and you could easily watch me work. Let's imagine that I'm your new producer. You can watch me do everything in the system way easier than standing like behind them or like across the desk. I used to joke when I trained LSPs, I would like sit there, but like every 10 seconds, I'd have to get up and like stand over their shoulder and like point where to click. And I would say, I need to get me a laser pointer. So I can just think, right? Well, here I can just use my mouse and say, hey, David, on this question, you always answer yes, and this is why. On this question, you always answer no, and this is why. Click this little button and you'll see the descriptions of what the different roof types are. Who knows what a hip and gable is? I don't freaking know. I always click that little thingy and it tells me. Isn't that cool? So like you can literally be face-to-face / see what they're doing on the screen, because Valerie asked you, how do we train someone virtually? Just like you're in person, but honestly, very similarly. And I think it's really neat that with screen sharing and like you being able to point stuff out on the monitor is really cool. And in terms of like having them shadow someone, they could literally watch and listen to someone. How cool is that? Like literally watch them on the video and see what that person's doing. How neat to see it in real life, not just a hypothetical or whatever. So I would leverage technology like this. Absolutely. 100%. It's amazing. And then like Lisa's doing, Justin's doing, Dave is doing, having a plan. The great thing is most of our carriers, because we are multi-carrier on this call, has online learning that people can do from home. And you know what? I kind of looked through some of ours. It's been a while since I looked at some of ours. They've added a lot. They've added a lot of content on product knowledge and on systems knowledge and things. So I would definitely leverage your online learning there, but you also must leverage actual sales training through companies like CWC or others. It's a wonderful time to train and develop your team. And then somebody else had another question about, actually several people had this, that's why I want to jump in. How do I get people licensed if I can't, right? So like, would one of y'all talk about, because Lisa is unique, and amazing, by the way. All of us aren't so lucky. They can't just do a 4-day online course and have a license. So what are we doing now? We're building our benches, right? We're talking to people, starting to pre-train, et cetera. But maybe one of the guys, would y'all talk about what would you do if they're not licensed or experienced? How would you at least maybe start them along the process, even if you're not hiring them just yet?
Absolutely, I can speak to that. So what we're recommending people do is actually create a roadmap for them. So get on with maybe an exam effects program that's got all the content and the education in there, and then create an actual roadmap that they can follow. If you just hand it to them and say to study, we all know how that works. But if you give them an actual roadmap to follow and have some type of accountability behind it, we've seen the highest level of success with that. So maybe there's 7 chapters in that exam effects. We break that up accordingly over the course of 2 weeks and set them a timeline to take that first test exam. One would hope 2 weeks from now, the testing centers would start to open up. But if not, once they get to the point where they prove proficiency, they pass that initial exam where they're ready for the state test, then we just pair them up with somebody to support. So we basically tell them that we're going to put you in a sales support role where they're assisting a top producer and rewarding a top producer. And at the same time, they get the mentor underneath them. And in a sales support role, they're essentially doing a lot of the appointment setting, a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to dials and calls. And at the same time, like to your point, Joseph, they get to interact and watch their screen and hear and say how they do everything. And that's one of the best ways to learn that I've found. And then in between there too, using, platform like CWC for them to take in, a lot of great content and really take advantage of this time that you might not otherwise have to really do some in-depth training with that individual until the license.
And Brian just brought up a point that I forgot about. I think Texas is doing it too. Arizona, Brian says Arizona is now doing provisional licenses, like temp licenses, and Allstate is one carrier that's on this call, is actually giving them buying authority. And I heard Texas is doing that too. I don't know how many other states are doing that, but many states are. So look into that.
Justin, why don't you see if you can get through as many of these questions as you can before we run out of time? I know we got a bunch in there.
Yes, sir. So there was a question here about Team Hired, and it says, what is the process? David wants to know, what is the process of working with somebody like Team Hired? Who sets them up? How many? Would you talk for just a moment about that to David's question, Dave?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, it's a pretty simple process. You can either set up on our website, filling out the interest form, or, give us a call right at the number. You can call me directly too. Happy to drop my cell phone in the chat. And the process is pretty simple. So that first call, we like to get to know you, get to know about your goals and what you're looking for in your agency in terms of candidates and hiring needs. And then from there, once we get you set up, we do an onboarding call. And during that process of the onboarding call, really what we like to do is dissect some of the things. What does your compensation plan look like? What is your hiring process now look like? And then if we find any holes in that process or any recommendations, we'll help coach and guide that. And then what we start doing immediately is putting up the paid job ads, aggregating the candidates. We have people start to call them, do some basic vetting, and then we'll schedule them in those group Zoom interviews. And what we're doing now too, again, what we really like about the process is before, when we'd schedule them live in a group in your office, we obviously didn't have the luxury, the ability to be there. Now we can have, one of our recruiters actually be on that first call with you to coach you through the process, guide you through the process, step by step. And then at the very end, give you some valuable feedback. And what we're seeing a lot of times is, people come into it first a little bit apprehensive because it's never been done before and they've never done a group interview, especially virtually. But after they get done with it that first time, they get a lot more comfortable. And with that comfort comes confidence. And then I think the common theme is, I don't want to hire any other way before.
Now, we've got a couple questions here on accountability. We have a question here where she said, I hired someone in March. Goodness, where is it? I'll have to summarize it. I hired someone in March. They only wrote a handful of items. They've only quoted like 8 policies so far this month, right? And it's April 22nd. Can I fire them? What should I do? And then Jose asked the question, would you let go of someone remotely if they're just not cutting it? So if it's not working out, how do you do that remotely? And then conversely, someone else just asked, what if you have to fire them and they don't return the equipment? there certainly are some challenges with this, right? So who wants to maybe speak to that? Maybe Craig or
I'll
Justin.
take the accountability one. Look, here's the vast majority of problems in agencies when it comes to staff production start with the very initial conversation you have with them about what's expected. And the fact that nobody is doing anything when that person comes on board to communicate or to reinforce those expectations. They just hire people and kind of throw them in the deep end of the pool and hope they can swim, and there's not much more than that. And people are going to do the minimum. Humans are wired to get by. Whatever they do today, if there's no negative consequence, they're probably going to do the exact same thing tomorrow if that got them through the day. That's just the way they are. So you in that initial interview, you've got to talk about expectations in terms of activity levels, not just how many items they need to write or policies, but what they got to be doing every day. And then the very first day when you turn them loose, whether that's day 1 or day 3, or it shouldn't take 90 days to get somebody up to speed. You've got to start reinforcing whatever it is you're looking for. So we have an onboarding program, that's weekly for the first 4 weeks, then the second month, then the third month. And there needs to be very clear and defined expectations for each period of time. Each week for the first 4 weeks, second month, third month. And you've got to hold them to that. So even if it's just, say your expectation is 5 items for the first week, they need to know that coming in, as soon as their week starts, maybe you give them a day or two to understand the systems, all that stuff. But once you've turned them loose, there's got to be something there they're held accountable to create a sense of urgency that they've got to do. Even if it's just 3, there's got to be something. We try to use 10, and we don't want them thinking on Friday if they have 6 that they're good. Now they might be. If they got a few deals in the works and they got a great attitude and things are going well, we may give them more time. So it's not just a black or white thing, but we want to make sure that when they come on, that expectation is very clear in terms of what they've got to do from a production perspective and the activity. So as we, let's say we're looking for 100 phone calls a day, right? And day 2, it's 12 o'clock and we've looked at it and they've got like 17 calls. Well, you can't wait a week to talk about that. You can't wait several days. You got to deal with that now, and always try to make accountability about them. When you find out what they want, that's when you can hold people accountable in a way that will drive them. So if I'm working with somebody, let's say I just hired Lisa and she's been with us for 3 weeks. The first 2 weeks went great. She's working through her friends and family. She's doing a great job. But now we're on week 3 and she's not meeting her expectations in terms of, activity. I need to have a conversation with her if I haven't already and find out what's important to her, what she wants to do, what specifically she wants to do with her money. Not just make more of it, but what do you want to accomplish? And if I can get her to tell me that she wants to buy a house or pay off debt or send her kids to college, whatever, now I've got something that I can take our comp plan, our average premiums, and I can build the process to make that happen and make it all about her, right? And we do that together. And we figure out what that activity level is going to have to look like in order for her to buy that house. And then the very next day, if she falls a little short of that or falls way short of that, then that's when you have a conversation. Instead of having the conversation about the production or the agency, now it's about, Lisa, how are you ever going to get that house if you don't do the things that we talked about yesterday? And you try to make it about them. Accountability always, when possible, needs to be about them, not you or the agency or your goals or anything like that. It's got to be what can you do to help them get what they want. And if you look at it that way, when it comes to accountability, by first defining and setting that expectation, having a onboarding process that's very clear that you hold them accountable to from the very, very beginning, you won't wake up 6 months later or lose sleep at night trying to figure out how you're going to fire this person that is now writing 11 items a month, because you would have done that much earlier. And Joseph knows this. In our operation, once we know they're not a good fit, there's no need in wasting any time with them. And sometimes that might be on day 1. It could be day 3. It might be week 3. Usually if they get through the first month, we're probably pretty good, okay? But once we know they're not a good fit, once they've proven this is not going to work out, we jet them. We just move on, because there's no need in wasting any more time or energy with that. Now, there are times where we may accept someone's production as a contributor and not necessarily a high performer, as long as you're not affecting culture or causing problems. But as soon as you know, you got to get rid of them. So make sure you set good expectations. Make sure you hold them accountable from day one. Make it about them. And then when you know this is not going to work out, you need to move on to somebody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't echo sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I can't echo that enough too. I think, you find that great candidate and get in your organization. A lot of times too, when it gets to the point where they're writing 11 items a month, it might not always be that they're the wrong fit. It might have been they didn't get the tools that they needed and the training that they needed to effectively do the job. And you got this great candidate you invested all this money into, and now they're operating at this place of mediocrity. And if you don't get rid of them, they're probably thinking this isn't for me, and they end up going elsewhere. And that can become an expensive cycle you go through. So what we recommend to do is, just to your point, Craig, is you should map out what does day one look like for that candidate when they start in your organization. Like by the hour, what is week one? What is week two? What is week three? Where it's completely mapped out. And I think that's even a good exercise to do with the office. Like get together in a conference room, put some sticky notes up on the board and map that out and aim for perfection. And now that's your 30-day, 60-day, 90-day roadmap, where if you were walking in as a brand new person, that you would be set up for absolute success and just having just a great deal of intention, behind that onboarding process.
Got some questions about the group interviews. Caleb wanted to know, do you ask the same question to each person, or just one question and maybe target a person, or just throw out a question and see who jumps on it? So how do you do the questions? Justin, you're shaking your head. Is there a way that you do it?
Yeah, so I ask each one of them one question. That's pretty much, tell me about yourself and what you're looking for in a new professional opportunity. And then based off of that answer, I then start bouncing around. The questions are going to be different for each person, because that question there will tell me the questions that I need to ask next based off what they said and how I want to try to figure out what it is that they are good at, what they're looking for, and what their skill level is. So, and I will round robin that. I'll bounce around on the screen. That way you're surprising those people, because if you go in order, you're going to have somebody who's been sitting there rehearsing that answer because they know it's coming. So we would definitely bounce them around.
All right. Let's see here. So when it comes to, hold on, I'm trying to find this question. So I've not done well with hiring or training staff. Someone's honest. Anybody else have that problem? Right? Have we all? So someone says, I'm an agency owner, and I have not done well hiring and training staff. I'd like to hire staff. I always end up being the primary sales and CSR person. So we got kind of a lone ranger here. What can I do to get somebody else in and start duplicating myself? Janisha is asking. How can she start to duplicate herself and really get good people on?
I would say I can speak to that a little bit. I think, again, it comes out to, it ties into the roadmap, creating that in there. So you're very intentional with what's happening with that new hire, all the way from, once you find that great candidate, bring them in, what's taking place on day one, week 2, week 3. And if you're the sole person in there right now, when I first started my business, the best way I trained people is I was right in the trenches with them. They were alongside me in my seat, and we're in a virtual environment right now. They could be watching your screen, where you're the tone setter, kind of leading by example for that individual, and really staying in touch with them, at a level that even Craig talked about there too, where you're setting goals with them and finding out, what is this person's personal goals? How can I tie them into the business goals, and have those clear and firm expectations for that individual.
I'm not sure if that's on Dave's end or mine. You guys can see that he's paused too, right?
Yeah, he's paused. And I'll kind of just finish up what he was saying. I think that, look, first of all, you're definitely not alone. We've all I've made so many bad hires in the beginning of my career. It always came down for me initially, it was not communicating very well in terms of expectations and what they needed to do. But also a lot of times it was just a lack of delegation and not allowing them to go through that part of the process, because you might be scared that they're not going to get that deal, or they can't save that customer as well as you, or something like that. So, what I would do if I was you, if you're by yourself, try to figure out what are some things that you need help with immediately, to be able to do more. And it could be something that's minor to begin with. And then you continue to build off of that. So you may just need somebody to help you with the phones for a while, but then you're going to get to the point where you need help with service, or you need help with sales. The more and more you do, the more and more you're going to need. And one day you'll find out you need help with interviewing and running the agency and all the other things. So just start to delegate work. Be very clear on your expectations. Make sure you have a good conversation about, what's expected for them, from you, of them. And that will help you a lot. I think that's, every time I look back on all the hires that didn't work out for me, it usually boiled down to that. And I think somebody said it about, it may not be that they're not a good fit. It may be that you just didn't do a very good job of training. It could be that you didn't provide the structure necessary for them to be successful. And anytime you lose somebody that you didn't want to lose, I always go back and look and think, man, what could I have done different? What could I have said different? What could have I implemented differently? How could I have made sure that didn't happen, or at least done everything possible to make sure that didn't happen, and start making that a part of your hiring process. If you go to our hiring process on the platform and you watch all the videos and all the content, the onboarding process, all that, that's what it is. It's a culmination of all the different mistakes that were made. And then we just kept going back and refining it. And now when we bring somebody on, we feel pretty good that they're going to work out, and that we followed that process and tried to eliminate, them slipping through the cracks. We kind of peel back the layers of the onion to figure out who it is we're dealing with, and make sure that they're going to be as successful as possible because of the structure that we provide.
Great thing that I recommend implementing in there too is the exit interview. So anybody that does leave your organization, they got some valuable intel. Really try to dig deep and do an exit interview with them, have that mapped out, and try to find out some exact reasons and tell them, listen, I'm being transparent with you. I'm trying to make it better for the next person coming in. You'll get a lot of valuable information. And you can also do this up front in the hiring process too. If you're running into obstacles where you're maybe doing job offer after job offer and nobody's accepting, there's usually something to be said there. And doing an exit interview with that candidate to find out why they didn't take the job, you'll get invaluable insight to your unique process and be able to adapt to it.
And we had a really honest question from David saying, hey, I don't know where you find all these producers that can write 5 to 10 policies in their first week. I sure can't. David, man, it starts with those expectations, but also what we require that they do. And David, look, you're in the program, so you need to go through the hiring course, David, and see how we position the quote sheets. They bring in 15 to 20 leads. And somebody asked, Sean and Rob asked about how do we pitch comp. Here's how I pitch it, just real quick for you guys. When I'm pitching the whole opportunity, I'm using the CWC compensation calculator, which shows the salary plus all the different commission tiers and the total that they can make based on each tier. So we're selling the whole opportunity. And what I'll say is, David, man, I'm going to give you access to world-class training, some of the best training that you're going to ever have. I'm going to give you every system or resource that you need. We even here at our agency have a dedicated service team to help take care of your customers. We're going to have access to thousands of leads, our requotes, win-backs, cross-sells. Our service team does an amazing job generating items. Our service team generates about 150 policies a month for us, just off of inbound calls, right, that they generate. So I'm going to give you all of that, David. All of this opportunity, the keys to the kingdom are here. Here's what I need. You must be licensed. You got to do a little bit of pre-training. I need you to bring in 20 prospects. I'm going to give you access to thousands, literally thousands over the course of your career. I'm going to pay for every bill that you have here, that computer, that phone, the leads, everything. I need you to bring in 20. Can you bring in 20 prospects to have access to this? We're going to start with people that you know, like, and trust, who know, like, and trust you. And we're going to practice. We're going to learn the systems. We're going to quote auto and property and umbrella every single time, times 20. Guess what? By the time we've done that, you now know the system. And we're going to find 4 or 5 of those 20 that we're going to help in the first week. That should be about 10 or so policies, 10 or so items. David, that's the deal, man. And I think it's more than fair. Wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you agree? We're giving you all of this. We just asked for this. Okay? David, are you in? So that's how I pitch it. If y'all want to say something else, however you pitch the opportunity or the comp, but David, that's how they get started. They're not starting in here and doing 4 days of training and like job shadowing for 3 weeks, and then we give them a list of like tag mailer calls, which are like 90% wrong numbers. No, they start with 20 to 30 people that know, like, and trust them, so they can learn the systems, practice, and we find 5 or 6 that we can write. Yes, of course, we're the ones having to write it because we've got binding authority. So they're basically glorified telemarketers bringing in leads. So that's how I pitch it. I'm trying to cram that into like a 2-minute explanation. If anybody else wants to say anything else, that's how I do it, though.
Yeah, I would just say that I would raise your expectations. I mean, when you think about, how do you get somebody to write 5 or 10 items in a week, right? They're there for 40 hours. It's for 5 days. They're probably going to write their own business. So that's probably 2 or 3 items right there, maybe more, depending on how many cars they have. We've had people hit 100 items their very first month. It's all about how you set them up. It's and the structure that you have. We're not expecting that. We're not really expecting them to to be a superstar from the very beginning. We just want them to be at least 40 items a month or more, in order to have a position here. So that sense of urgency out of the gate is so critical. When you don't do that, when you just bring somebody on and kind of just like, hey, do the best you can, you're going to find that people, they're going to struggle. They're not going to, because there's nothing there for them to reach. There's no bar. There's no standard. It's just, whatever. And even if your number's only 3, have a number though. Have something where they know by Friday or whatever that 5th day is, if I don't hit that, I'm going to be in trouble. And you're going to find out, how good this person is, or actually what kind of potential they have. Because if they're not willing to make that happen in order to keep that job, then, they're just not going to work out. And, that's worked for us for years. So I would say raise your expectations. Think more about in terms of what's possible. Don't worry about what other agencies are doing, because that doesn't really matter what other people are doing. All that matters is what you're doing, what you're capable of doing. And you basically have 5 days. So you've got 40 hours. Even if they're doing service and stuff, still 40 hours. Can they not write 5 items in 40? I think anybody could do that that's got a license, that's got the support, has the training, set up the right way. If they put the effort in, it's just a matter of a household or 2, and they're there, especially when they're going to write their own. So I would just say that. I would definitely raise the bar a little bit and start thinking a little bit bigger, and that's how you're going to get a lot more.
Well, with that said, I'll jump in because we're coming close on time to thank you guys so much for participating. I'll pass it to Craig, Dave, Justin, Lisa, just to say quick goodbyes. But one last thing, I want to thank them for volunteering their time to share with you guys. I've worked very closely with Lisa for years. I love her. I've talked with, 5 or 6 of her candidates in the past week and a half. 5 or 6 that she liked enough to pass to me from the interviews that Dave set up for her. And now she's having to pick. She's having to decide. It's hard. We might just like break a stick and throw it down. I'm just kidding. But like she's talking to so many great people. And I love Lisa. I respect her a lot. And that comes out when I talk to her candidates. So y'all, now's an amazing time to talk to people. Don't just shut down because of the pandemic. No, pick up that phone and start recruiting. Maybe connect with Team Hired, see what they can do to help you guys too. And of course, if we at CWC can help you on any way, reach out. But I'll pass it to the rest of y'all to take us out.
Yeah, let me echo what you said. I don't know if you guys noticed or not. Lisa's over there taking notes, right? She's got a little notepad. She's taking notes. She's on the webinar. She's the expert. She's still taking notes based on what everybody else is saying. Lisa, if you don't know, was a Hall of Fame inductee this year. She got robbed of her trip because of COVID. Also number 1 her region. I've known her for years. She does an amazing job. And I'm sure Justin, I don't know Justin as well, so I can't speak quite to Justin's ability, but I'm sure he does a fantastic job. But, I just kind of wanted to point that out. You've got somebody who's at the very, very top of their game and still trying to get better and still working with other people. So, that's what these webinars are all about, is to try to bring people together to share ideas. I did see one question about, are the interview questions going to be available, the ones that Dave's used? Yes, we'll make sure those are available. Matter of fact, Dave's also putting a lot of content together to help, with this process and things that he's doing. We're going to host that content on our website in the owner section. So you can be looking for that in the next few days. But if you guys got anything to say before we close it out, I'll turn it over to Dave and Lisa and Justin.
Yeah, I'll end it by saying that, I know we're all in times of uncertainty, and during those times of uncertainty, fear can set in. But, as difficult as it may be sometimes, fear can be determined and defined in 2 different ways. You can forget everything and run, or, face everything and rise. And I think, those that embrace, times like this and, find the opportunity in those times of uncertainty, I think in the end, end up in a better place. So I encourage everybody to, leverage these times to find the talent that's out there that wasn't there before, to bring into your organization, build bonds that maybe you never were able to before with these individuals by being there for them in these times, and just really lean into your business and, wish everybody well.
Justin, Lisa?
I gotta say something. Did you literally just say lean in on this conference call, Dave? I'm just kidding. That's an inside joke.
Talk about
Justin.
I would just tell anyone to not be scared to jump in here and do this. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, especially in this setting. Doing the group interviews. Just jump in and do it. It's easy. You're going to find a ton of qualified candidates, and you're going to be able to grow your agency for sure.
All right, Lisa, it's up to you. Close us out.
So Craig got inducted to the Hall of Fame also this year. So congratulations, Craig. That's we're gonna do our own walk sometime. And, that's very exciting. But Team Hired has made recruiting fun. I'm seriously, it's fun, and they've made it so easy. That, before I was like, oh my gosh, I need to hire someone. I have to do this. Now it's like, I need to hire someone. I have Team Hired to help. And you have Joseph and Craig, and you have their platform. I mean, I don't want to say easy, because yes, you do have to be ready, be totally ready, and just, like Justin said, jump in and do it. But you have so much support. We have each other. We have so much, just do it. And the worst, even if you decided to not hire, but at least you can get practice, I'm going to say, but you'll be surprised. And with all these tools available, that just do it, and it'll be good. And like I said, we have each other to help each other out. So that's the great thing about all state agents and Allstate, is that we all are here together. So
that's right. And you're right. We're going to take that walk soon. Might be in September. Might be later. We'll just have to wait and see when everything opens back up. We look forward to that. But look, guys, thanks for being on the call today. Appreciate all our guests. As always, we just try to bring as much information to you as we can to help you and your agency get better. And hang in there. We're going to get through all this stuff. And if you take the time to work on your agency and work with your team, on the other side of this, you're just going to be a lot stronger and a lot better as a result. So hope you enjoyed today's call, and we'll see you again next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, guys.